Just 2 days after the wedding, my son-in-law showed up at my place with a notary. "We just sold this house, Arthur. You're moving to a retirement community." His smug smile promised a quick victory over the old man. But I calmly replied, "Excellent. Let's stop by the police station first. They're very interested in what I sent them about you." Those words changed everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. "Arthur, Clara and I need our own place to start our family properly." Damian leaned forward, his wine glass catching the restaurant's dim, nautical light. "Your house would be perfect for a young couple." The words hit me like a bucket of icy seawater. I set down my fork, the taste of the wedding cake, still sweet on my tongue just moments before, now turning to ash in my mouth. We'd celebrated their marriage 2 days ago. 2 days, and now this. "Damian, that's my home." My voice remained level, but my hands gripped the edge of the heavy oak table. "I designed and built it with my own hands 30 years ago." Clara shifted uncomfortably between us, her new wedding ring catching the flickering candlelight. The intimate booth at the Mariner's Catch suddenly felt suffocating. Other diners at nearby tables laughed and chatted, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in ours. "But you're just one person in such a large house." Damian's charming smile never wavered. "It's not practical. And at your age, wouldn't you prefer something more manageable?" At my age, 70 wasn't ancient, but Damian spoke as if I had 1 foot already in the grave. The champagne flute trembled in my grip. "We'd take such good care of it," he continued, reaching across the table to touch Clara's hand, a gesture of feigned reassurance. "Think about it. Your grandchildren playing in those rooms someday." Clara's eyes, wide with a mixture of hope and anxiety, darted between us. "Dad, Damian, please don't fight. It's supposed to be a happy day." Happy? I'd written a $20,000 check for their wedding reception. The elaborate floral arrangements from the ceremony still sat, wilting slightly, in the center of our table, petals browning at the edges. "Damian." I straightened in my seat, my back rigid. "At my age, I'm still perfectly capable of making decisions about my own property. You can stay for a few days while you find your own place." His confident expression flickered. For just a moment, something cold and calculating passed behind his eyes before the charming mask was firmly back in place. "Of course, Arthur. I understand completely." But his tone had sharpened, like a blade being honed. "It's just that rental prices in Seacliff these days, and with Clara's salary from the library." "We'll manage, honey." Clara squeezed his hand, but I caught the tremor of worry in her voice. Money had always been a struggle for her, especially since her difficult divorce 5 years ago. Damian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I was hoping we could discuss this as family," he purred, his voice smooth as silk. "After all, what's the point of holding on to such a valuable asset when it could benefit all of us?" Valuable asset? Not my home. Not the place where I'd carried my wife, Eleanor, over the threshold. The place where Clara had taken her first steps, where Eleanor had spent her final, peaceful days. An asset. The soft jazz playing in the background suddenly felt mocking. Couples at other tables shared intimate conversations, their lives blissfully intact, while mine was being dismantled in real time. A waiter glided past, refilling water glasses with practiced invisibility. "The answer is no." Each word came out harder and colder than the last. "Find your own place." Damian leaned back, his smile turning brittle. "Well, we can certainly discuss it more when emotions aren't running so high." Emotions? As if wanting to keep my own house, the bedrock of my life, was irrational. Clara's face crumpled slightly. "Maybe we should go home." Home? She meant my house, where they'd been staying since returning from their brief honeymoon, where Damian had already started asking pointed questions about the geothermal heating system, the property taxes, the neighborhood's appreciation rates. I pushed back from the table, my napkin falling unheeded to the floor. The other diners blurred in my peripheral vision as blood rushed to my ears. "Dad, wait." Clara half rose from her seat, her voice a pleading whisper, but I was already standing, fishing my wallet from my jacket. Two crisp $100 bills hit the table with more force than necessary. "Take care of the check," I managed to say, my voice tight. "I need some air." Damian's voice followed me as I turned away, a chillingly calm sound that sliced through the restaurant's ambient noise. "We'll talk about this later, Arthur, when you've had time to think it through properly." The restaurant's warmth pressed against my back as I walked toward the exit, each step carrying me away from my daughter's pleading eyes and my son-in-law's calculating smile. The hostess nodded politely, completely unaware that my world had just shifted beneath my feet. Outside, the cool May air bit at my face. I fumbled for my car keys, my hands shaking with more than just the seaside chill. The drive home was a blur. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the knot of my tie felt like a noose around my neck. Inside, I loosened the silk and poured 3 fingers of single malt scotch. The study welcomed me with its familiar shadows, the leather armchair worn perfectly to my shape, the built-in bookshelves holding 40 years of architectural tomes and collected wisdom, Eleanor's photos smiling serenely from the corner of my desk. I sank into the chair with a heavy grunt. Outside, the streetlights cast long, geometric patterns across my yard. My house. The sheer audacity of it still stole my breath. $20,000. I'd written that check without a moment's hesitation, watching Clara's face light up as she described her dream wedding. The reception at the Mariner's Catch, the string quartet playing by the sea, the flowers that cost more than my first car. Also, my daughter could have her perfect day. And now her husband wanted the house, too. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through wedding photos from 2 days ago. Damian cutting the cake, his hand placed possessively over Clara's on the knife. Damian dancing with my daughter, spinning her until she laughed with pure, unadulterated joy. Damian shaking my hand, calling me Dad, for the first time. Had he been planning this even then? The scotch burned, but not as much as the memory of Damian's smile when I'd refused. The smile of a predator who had expected resistance, as if this were all part of some larger, more sinister game. My fingers found the drawer of my desk, pulling out the leather-bound logbook where I kept important thoughts and project notes. Eleanor had given it to me when I retired from my architectural firm. "For all those grand designs still rattling around in your head," she'd said. May 2026. I wrote the date with a steady hand. Damian Thorne made demand for house ownership during wedding celebration dinner. Claims practical concerns. Mentions my age repeatedly. Clara uncomfortable but supportive of husband. The pen felt heavy in my hand. What kind of man does that? 2 days after a wedding I paid for, he wants my home. Not asking to buy it, not suggesting we sell and split the proceeds. Wants it handed over. Like I'm some doddering old fool ready for the nursing home. I set the pen down and walked to the large picture window overlooking the Pacific. The street looked peaceful. Porch lights glowed. Televisions flickered behind curtains. Normal families living normal lives. Not dealing with sons-in-law who spoke of valuable assets over wedding cake. Back at the desk, I opened my laptop. Bank statements, property records, insurance documents, the numbers that represented a lifetime of careful planning and hard work. The house was worth close to $1 million, maybe more in today's market. My pension and savings would last another 20, maybe 30 years if I was careful. Damian knew all this, somehow. His questions during their engagement hadn't seemed invasive at the time, just a future son-in-law showing interest in the family he was joining. Now they felt like strategic reconnaissance. "What's your property tax situation like, Arthur? This neighborhood must have incredible appreciation rates. Have you considered what you'll do with all this space eventually?" I'd answered honestly, proud of my financial stability, proud to show Clara's fiancé that she came from a secure family. Eleanor's photo caught the lamplight, her kind eyes seeming to watch me as I worked. What would she say about this? She'd always been a better judge of character than I was, better at reading the hidden motives behind a charming smile. "Trust but verify," she used to say. "People show you who they are if you just pay attention." I'd been too happy about Clara's engagement to pay proper attention. Too grateful she'd found someone after her disastrous first marriage. Too relieved she seemed settled and content. The logbook lay open, waiting for more observations. I picked up the pen again. Damian Thorne, 40 years old. Investment advisor. Claims to help clients with wealth management. Works from home. Travels occasionally for client meetings. Never mentioned specific firms or showed detailed market knowledge during conversations. The more I wrote, the more questions emerged. What exactly did Damian do for a living? I'd never seen him in a proper office. Never heard him take a business call that sounded authentic. His income seemed adequate but not excessive. Yet he'd proposed with a 3-carat ring that must have cost a small fortune. I closed the logbook and reached for my phone. Tomorrow I would start asking questions, beginning with a call to Marcus Cole. My lawyer had handled Eleanor's estate, knew my financial situation inside and out, and, most importantly, understood the value of discretion. Something felt profoundly wrong about Damian Thorne. Very wrong indeed. The grocery bags felt heavier than usual as I pulled into my driveway on Thursday afternoon. 2 days of restless sleep since that confrontation at the restaurant had left me drained. Every shadow seemed to hide a new threat to my peace of mind. Hector Morales straightened up from his rose garden as I stepped out of the car, his weathered face wearing the expression of a man with urgent news. "Arthur," he called, crossing from his yard to mine with the quick, efficient steps of a retired firefighter. "I need to tell you something important." I set the groceries on the hood of my car. Hector's former professional instincts were evident in his serious tone. "What's going on, Hector?" "Yesterday afternoon, Damian brought someone to your house." Hector glanced toward my front door, then back at me, his voice low. A man in a suit, carrying a briefcase and some kind of laser measuring device. My blood went cold. What were they doing, exactly? Walking around the property, measuring things, taking photos. The suit was writing everything down in a notebook. Hector's eyes narrowed. Looked like a professional assessment to me. A real thorough job. The groceries suddenly felt insignificant. How long were they here? About an hour, maybe longer. Damian had keys. Let him inside, too. Hector's expression showed he understood the grave implications. "The guy spent a lot of time in your backyard, measured the fence line, took pictures of the foundation." My hands clenched into fists. "Figured you knew about it," Hector said. "Otherwise, I would have called sooner." "Thank you, Hector. This is very important information." I grabbed the grocery bags with shaking hands. Very important indeed. Inside, I dropped the bags on the kitchen counter and went straight to my study. The computer took an eternity to boot up, each second stretching out like an hour while my mind raced through horrifying possibilities. Browser history. If Damian had used my computer, there would be traces. The search history loaded, and my worst fears materialized on the screen. Wednesday afternoon, while I'd been at the hardware store, someone had conducted extensive research. Property appraisers, Seacliff, California, real estate evaluation services, quick house sale companies, cash buyers, legal requirements, property transfer, California power of attorney, real estate transactions, elderly homeowner assistance programs. Each search term hit like a physical blow. I scrolled down, finding more. I clicked through the visited websites. Professional appraisal services, companies that promise quick, below-market sales for cash, and legal firms specializing in property transfers for senior citizens. Damian hadn't just brought an appraiser to my house. He'd been researching the entire process of taking it from me. The chair creaked as I leaned back, processing the sheer magnitude of his deception. This wasn't a spontaneous, greedy request made over dinner and wine. This was a calculated, premeditated plan, probably months in the making. I thought back to the engagement period, Damian's careful questions about my finances, his subtle interest in my daily routines. Had he been evaluating me like a target from the very beginning? My phone buzzed. A text message from Clara. "Dad, are you feeling better? Damian says you seemed upset at dinner. Maybe we can all talk tonight." Talk. Damian wanted to talk again, probably to present his reasonable proposal, now backed by professional appraisals and legal research. I stared at the screen, the evidence of his plot clear as daylight. With trembling fingers, I reached for my phone and dialed Marcus Cole's number. This was bigger than just wanting my house. This was systematic fraud, and I needed professional help immediately. Marcus Cole and Associates. This is Sandra speaking. My hands shook as I gripped the phone tighter. Sandra, it's Arthur Vance. I need to speak with Marcus immediately. It's urgent. He's with a client, Mr. Vance. Can I have him call you back? Tell him it's about fraud. Real estate fraud. The words felt foreign and ugly in my mouth. Tell him my son-in-law, Damian Thorne, is trying to steal my house. A beat of silence. I'll get him right away, sir. The wait stretched on endlessly. I paced my study, the browser history still glowing on the computer screen like the scene of a crime. Arthur. Marcus's voice crackled with immediate concern. Sandra said something about fraud involving your son-in-law. Damian Thorne. I forced the name through gritted teeth. He's planning to take my house, Marcus. I have proof he's been researching how to do it. The silence on Marcus's end lasted a moment too long. Damian Thorne, you said? Yes, he married my daughter 2 days ago, and now he's… Arthur, I need you to sit down. Marcus's professional tone had shifted, becoming sharp and urgent. Give me a moment to check something in my files. I heard the frantic clicking of a keyboard, the rustle of papers, the familiar sounds of Marcus's methodical approach, but his tone suggested this was anything but routine. Arthur, I have 2 active cases and 1 closed one involving a Damian Thorne. Each word hit me like a shard of ice. He specializes in a particularly nasty form of real estate fraud targeting elderly homeowners. The room tilted around me. Are you saying he's done this before? His pattern is consistent. He marries into families, gains trust, then uses forged documents or undue influence to claim property ownership. Marcus's voice had gone completely professional, as if he were reading from a case file. The victims are always men in their late 60s or 70s, always recently widowed, always with adult children who are financially struggling. My free hand found the edge of my desk for support. But he just married my daughter. That's exactly his timeline, Arthur. He works fast, before the victims can react or seek proper legal advice. Papers rustled again on his end. How much did you know about his background? Nothing concrete. The admission felt pathetic. He claimed to be an investment advisor, worked from home. We were so happy Clara had found someone after her divorce. Arthur, you are in immediate danger. Marcus's urgency cut through my shock. Do not sign anything. Do not give him access to any of your financial documents. Do not let him handle any legal matters for you, no matter how trivial they seem. What should I do about Clara? She doesn't know what kind of man she's married. First, we gather evidence. Then, we protect your assets. Marcus's tone brooked no argument. Your daughter's heart can heal, Arthur, but your life savings can't be recovered once they're gone. I stared at the computer screen, at the damning evidence of Damian's research. He brought a property appraiser to my house yesterday. He used my computer to research the legal process. That's his standard procedure. Marcus spoke like he was reading from a playbook. Get a professional appraisal, forge the transfer documents, find a corrupt notary to validate the signatures. Tell me exactly what you've observed. I described everything. The demand at the restaurant, the appraiser's visit, the browser history, Damian's probing questions during the engagement. Classic pattern, Marcus confirmed. Arthur, I'm clearing my schedule. Can you come to my office first thing tomorrow morning? Bring every document related to your property, the deed, your will, insurance policies, bank statements. Should I call the police? Not yet. We need an ironclad case first. Marcus's experience showed in every word. Damian is sophisticated. He's beaten fraud charges before by claiming the victims willingly transferred the property and later developed memory problems. Memory problems. The implication stung, but I understood the vile strategy. One more thing, Arthur. Marcus's voice carried a chilling warning. Be very careful around him until we meet. If he suspects you know his true nature, he might accelerate his timeline. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the darkened window. My son-in-law wasn't just greedy. He was a professional predator who had chosen me as his next victim. But I hadn't survived 40 years as an architect by backing down from complex problems. Tomorrow, Marcus and I would begin building the case that would destroy Damian Thorne's criminal career. As I reached for my safes combination, I heard Damian's laughter from the kitchen. And for the first time since the restaurant, I smiled. Let him laugh while he could. The house felt different when I walked through the front door, knowing that within 24 hours, it would be transformed into a stage for a police operation. Detective Rossi's technical team was scheduled to arrive at 8 a.m. to install their equipment, and by evening, every word Damian spoke would be recorded for evidence. I had one night to mentally prepare for the performance of a lifetime. Clara and Damian were out for the evening, a celebratory dinner. He had called it, giving me precious hours of solitude to process what lay ahead. I sat in my study, surrounded by the meticulously organized evidence that had brought me to this point, and tried to imagine tomorrow's confrontation. Damian would present his forged documents with practiced confidence. I would need to react naturally, shocked, confused, gradually defeated. The performance had to be convincing enough that he would reveal his criminal methods on camera, leaving no room for doubt. Morning came too quickly. At 8 a.m. sharp, 3 unmarked vans pulled into my driveway. Detective Isabella Rossi emerged from the first vehicle, followed by a team of technical specialists carrying heavy equipment cases. "Mr. Vance, we'll have everything installed within 4 hours," she announced, her voice a low, reassuring hum of professionalism as she directed her team toward my house. After that, we rehearse. I watched in fascination as the specialists worked with surgical precision. Microcameras, each no bigger than a quarter, were seamlessly integrated into my living room and kitchen. One in a smoke detector, another behind a picture frame, a third disguised as a power outlet. Audio equipment followed. Directional microphones that could capture a whispered conversation from across the room. "These cameras record in ultra-high definition," the lead technician explained, adjusting a lens hidden within a bookshelf speaker. "The audio system filters out background noise automatically. Unless Damian is specifically looking for surveillance equipment, he won't notice a thing." Detective Rossi handed me an earpiece so small it was practically invisible, like a high-tech hearing aid. "This is a direct line to our monitoring station. We'll be able to guide you if necessary." "Where will you be positioned?" I asked, my voice a low murmur. "Mobile command unit across the street, in that landscaping truck. Officers in the Morales house and the one opposite. A backup team is staged 2 blocks away." She showed me a tablet displaying multiple crystal-clear camera angles from my own living room. "Response time will be under 30 seconds if you use the panic signal." By noon, the installation was complete. My familiar, comfortable home had become a sophisticated recording studio. Every surface concealed equipment worth more than my car. "Now we rehearse," Detective Rossi announced. For the next 2 hours, we practiced likely scenarios. A detective with a knack for playing smarmy villains took on the role of Damian, while I rehearsed natural responses to his manipulative tactics. "Remember, your safety is our top priority," Detective Rossi emphasized. "Don't try to trap him or be a hero. Let him reveal his criminality organically. Just be yourself. Be suspicious. Ask the questions any reasonable person would ask." "So, Arthur, we need to discuss the house transfer paperwork," the detective said, role-playing Damian's likely approach. "I'm not interested in transferring anything," I replied firmly. "Perfect," Rossi nodded. "Keep your responses natural and firm. The more he has to explain and justify his actions, the more evidence we'll gather." At 3 p.m., Detective Rossi tested all the communication systems one final time. The earpiece crackled to life. "Testing, Mr. Vance. Can you hear me clearly?" "Crystal clear." "Excellent. Officers are moving into position now." I watched through my kitchen window as neighbors I'd known for years welcomed visiting relatives into their homes. Hector Morales gave me a subtle, reassuring nod from his front yard, knowing his house now contained 2 armed officers ready to move on his signal. "Technical check complete," Detective Rossi reported from her command unit. "All cameras are recording. Audio levels are optimal, communication systems active." The house looked exactly the same, but I knew it was now a fortress of surveillance, documenting every movement, every conversation, every breath. At 5 p.m., Damian's car pulled into the driveway. "Showtime, Mr. Vance," Detective Rossi's voice whispered through my earpiece. "Remember, we're right here with you." I touched the small, smooth panic button in my pocket and watched through the front window as Damian approached my door, carrying a manila envelope that undoubtedly contained the forged documents, the culmination of his entire fraudulent enterprise. He knocked with a cheerful confidence, completely unaware that his next conversation would be his last as a free man. The doorbell rang at exactly 5:15 p.m., and I felt the tiny vibration from the communication device in my pocket, Detective Rossi's signal that all recording equipment was active and the team was on high alert. Through the window, I watched Damian climb my front steps with another man carrying a leather briefcase. Both wore confident smiles that I now recognized as purely predatory. This was it, the moment 3 weeks of methodical investigation had been building toward. I opened the door with practiced calm. "Damian, and you've brought a friend." "Arthur." Damian's enthusiasm seemed so genuine it was chilling. "This is Vincent Gallo, a licensed notary public. We have some wonderful news about your housing situation." Vincent Gallo looked exactly as I'd imagined a corrupt official would. Middle-aged, overly formal, carrying himself with a false air of authority. His handshake felt like touching a cold, dry snake. "Mr. Vance, such a pleasure," Vincent said, his voice dripping with manufactured sincerity. "Damian has told me so much about your unique circumstances." They settled into my living room with theatrical confidence, Damian spreading a sheaf of documents across my coffee table as if he owned the place. The hidden cameras, I knew, were recording every smug gesture, every calculated smirk, every incriminating movement. "Arthur, I have incredible news," Damian announced, his voice carrying the same smooth, persuasive tone he'd used when proposing to Clara. "We've just completed the sale of this house. You're moving to a lovely senior facility downtown. It's all arranged." I examined the papers with an architect's precision, noting the professional quality of the forgeries. The signature, a disturbingly accurate copy of my own, was already there. "That's interesting, Damian. Who exactly did you sell my house to?" "A wonderful young family." Damian's smile never wavered. "They're paying well above market value. Vincent here has all the legal documentation." Vincent opened his briefcase with a flourish, revealing official-looking stamps, seals, and notarization equipment. "Mr. Vance, these documents show the completed sale of your property. Everything is legally binding and has been properly notarized." "I don't recall agreeing to sell my house, Mr. Gallo." "Sometimes elderly individuals can forget these important arrangements," Vincent replied with practiced condescension. "The paperwork clearly shows your signature and your consent." Perfect. They were establishing the entire fraud on camera, using the exact language Detective Rossi had predicted. "Well, this is certainly unexpected," I said, maintaining my role as the confused elderly victim. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice was steady. "Perhaps we should drive to the police station first, just to make sure everything is proper." Damian's confident expression flickered for just a moment, like a faulty light bulb. "The police station? Why on earth would we need to go there?" "They're very interested in the information I sent them about your previous house sales." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Damian's face went pale, while Vincent shifted nervously in his chair. What do you mean by previous sales?" Damian's voice had lost its confident, silken tone. "I mean your activities in Boston, Miami, and 3 other cities, Damian. The police have been looking for you for quite some time." Damian stood abruptly, the forged documents scattering across the floor. "You're talking nonsense. Vincent, tell him these documents are completely legal." "Damian, what is he talking about?" Vincent's professional mask was cracking, revealing raw fear beneath. "You said this was a clean operation. I mean that Detective Isabella Rossi has 47 video and audio recordings of you discussing your criminal plans." "Damian?" I remained seated, watching their panic build. including your conversations with Vincent about forged notary seals. Vincent went white. Damian, you said this house was clean. You never mentioned any police investigations. Shut up, Vincent. Damian scrambled to grab the documents, heading for the door. This old man is confused. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But the unmistakable sound of car doors slamming shut outside made him freeze mid-step. Through the window, unmarked police vehicles had surrounded my house, officers positioning themselves at every exit. Damian turned back to me, his predatory confidence completely replaced by desperate, cornered fear. What have you done? I pressed the panic button in my pocket and said calmly, I protected my home from thieves, Damian. Something you should have considered before you decided to target the wrong architect. The front door burst open and Detective Rossi stepped through with 3 uniformed officers, their badges gleaming under my living room lights. Damian Thorne, she announced with profound, professional satisfaction. You're under arrest. I'm afraid there's nowhere to run, Damian, I said, as the reality of his situation crashed down on him. The front door burst open before he could take another step, and Detective Rossi stepped through with 3 uniformed officers, their badges gleaming under my living room lights. Philip stood frozen in the center of my living room, still clutching the forged documents that would now serve as the star evidence of his crimes. Damian Thorne, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, elder abuse, conspiracy, and operating an interstate criminal enterprise, Detective Rossi announced, her voice carrying the unshakable authority of 15 years in law enforcement. This is ridiculous. Damian's confidence shattered completely. Arthur, tell them this is a family misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Damian, was you thinking you could steal my house. I remained seated, watching justice unfold with the precision of a well-executed blueprint. Vincent Gallo had already raised his hands in surrender, his briefcase splayed open to reveal the tools of their criminal trade. Officers, I want to cooperate fully, he said, his voice shaking. I didn't know about his previous crimes. He told me this was a simple family matter. Mr. Gallo, you're also under arrest, Detective Rossi replied coolly. Your cooperation will be noted in your file. Vincent, don't say anything, Damian shouted as officers moved to secure him. They can't prove anything, but they could prove everything. The surveillance. Cameras had captured every word, every gesture, every incriminating admission. As Damian raised his hands for the handcuffs, I felt the deep, quiet satisfaction of a complex architectural project reaching its successful completion. Sir, we need you to hand over those documents, one officer commanded. Damian's last act of defiance was attempting to tear the forged papers in half. 2 officers stopped him immediately, carefully preserving the evidence that would send him to federal prison. These papers are private family business, he protested, his voice cracking. They're evidence in multiple felony cases across 5 states. Detective Rossi corrected, carefully collecting each document for the evidence chain. Through my front window, I watched neighbors gathering on their lawns, drawn by the commotion. Hector Morales stood in his yard with his arms crossed, giving me a slow, approving nod. My quiet suburban street had become a crime scene, and the entire community was witnessing Damian Thorne's downfall. Mr. Vance, for the record, Detective Rossi said, turning to me, her own body camera recording the official statement. Did these men attempt to fraudulently claim ownership of your house using forged documents? Yes, Detective. Using fake signatures, corrupt notary seals, and a systematic pattern of intimidation and manipulation. He's lying. Damian's desperation was complete now. This was a legitimate family arrangement. I was helping an elderly man who can't manage his own affairs. The irony was perfect. Damian's final defense was the very same condescending attitude that had motivated me to fight back so methodically. His Honor, the judge, will determine the legitimacy, Detective Rossi replied, leading Damian toward the door in handcuffs. Vincent's cooperation began immediately. Officers, I have information about other operations, other targets Damian was researching. I want to help prevent more crimes. Smart choice, Mr. Gallo, Detective Rossi said. Full cooperation might reduce your sentence from 20 years to 7. As the police cars loaded their prisoners, media vans began arriving. Word had spread quickly through the neighborhood that a major fraud operation had been exposed by an elderly resident's own detective work. "Mr. Vance," a reporter called from behind the yellow police tape, "how did you discover this criminal scheme?" 40 years as an architect taught me to analyze problems systematically, I replied, my voice clear and steady. When something doesn't make sense, you investigate until it does. Detective Rossi returned as the crowd began to disperse. "Outstanding work, Mr. Vance. This arrest closes cases in 5 states. You've likely saved dozens of families from this man. What happens next? The trial will be in about 8 weeks. With your evidence and today's recordings, a conviction is virtually certain." She handed me her card. "The district attorney will want to discuss your testimony, but this case is as solid as they come." I looked at my house, finally secure again, no longer under threat from criminal predators. The surveillance equipment would be removed tomorrow, returning my home to normal. But I would never be the same person who had been blindsided by Damian's demand 3 weeks ago. "Detective Rossi," I said, "thank you for believing an old man's suspicions were worth investigating." "Mr. Vance," she replied with genuine respect, "you didn't just help yourself. You stopped a career criminal who was destroying families across the country. That's something to be proud of." As the last police car disappeared down my quiet street, I realized that while this battle was won, the war for justice was just beginning. Damian's trial would be the final chapter in a story that started with his arrogant demand for my house. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I would sleep peacefully in my own bed, in my own house, protected by my own intelligence and unwavering determination. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.